Hey guys, hope everybody's having a happy new year. Getting off to a good solid start. If you're anything like me, you're starting to make your kind of your homestead, your gardening plans for the year. I'm working with a bunch of people right now, helping them design properties. The most I've worked with at one time, which is a little bit overwhelming, but overall, uh, let's just say it's keeping me focused and on task and making me be a little more organized. But while I was taking a short break from designs I'm preparing right now, I was kind of making a list of all the tools that I put to work when I'm doing consulting and design. And I want to say like anybody can do this. This is not stuff that uh, requires incredible skill sets aside from mostly patience and observation. And these are things that I'm teaching others. I'm not just throwing a picture at somebody and saying, "Here, do this, copy this." I try to teach them how to observe the land and how to implement systems that make sense and are regenerative and are useful and don't drive you up the wall when it comes to taking care of your land, taking care of the animals and the trees and everything that's on it. So here's a list, and I will drop in the notes, and I'm making a note right now to do this on the YouTube video to put in exactly which ones I'm using or something pretty close because it kind of depends on what platform of phone you're running. And this is actually I use all of this except for Google Earth on my phone. I run Earth on an old tablet and a simple little laptop just because I need a bigger screen. So the first thing that I do when I go out to somebody's property after I've gone over their goals and have a general idea of what infrastructure that they want to go in is the GIS. So that is a geological survey. Every state has one. Sometimes it's broken down by county. You usually just have to search it depending upon which jurisdiction you're in, but that'll show me the property boundaries. So that's always going to be one of our first limitations. We don't want to put anything too close to a property edge that's going to cause issues on down the line. So I get the boundaries, and often I'll have a customer and they'll already have the plot map, which is excellent. That's usually something you can get from your county courthouse, and I'm sure there's a way to get it electronically these days to put in a request. Like I said, every jurisdiction is different, but you can see your boundary lines and you know exactly what you're working with. This is especially important if we're going to put anything in terms of ponds or water, because we do not want, I mean, we don't want to cause a problem for anybody on down the line water wise anyhow, but especially when it comes to like a pond where there's a dam in place to retain the water. If that dam were to fail, we want to know what is below it because we do not want to flood anything, period. But we especially do not want to flood somebody's home or infrastructure or animals or anything of the sort. And we don't want to risk, we just don't want to risk that. So, boundaries. Uh, Another tool that I really like is a GPS mapping app that is tied in with your photos. So I take a photo and it embeds right there on the photo the coordinates. I think it usually even embeds the full address. And I think there's an option to get the elevation in there as well. If not, I can get that separately. And that lets me know, instead of just taking regular pictures, after if I've taken 20 or 30 pictures on somebody's property and I go back and I look at them later, I may not remember, okay, which way was I facing? Was I facing north? So the GPS mapping lets me know that, so that when I'm looking at this 2 or 3 days later, um, that I can kind of put together a picture. And between Google Maps and the GPS photo mapping, I can kind of like zoom in on a particular area and still not get backwards on my orientation. Um, there is an elevation app. I use this app separately. and it lets me determine without necessarily having to shoot a laser, which is the best way to do it once you're doing, especially if you're putting in swales. But instead of shooting a laser on site that day, I can note, okay, when I'm standing at this area facing this direction, my elevation is this. And then maybe I walk 50 yards in one direction and I take the same reading facing the same way, and I can figure out, okay, I've had this many feet of drop or rise, which is really useful when we're wanting to know about watershed, if we're wanting to collect water in a pond, if we're wanting to put in swales, if we're worried about a microclimate. Is this area too low for planting trees compared to another area? Uh, I use that all the time. It's incredibly useful. So that is an elevation reading. I also will pair that with a compass. So these, directions, elevation, helps me determine contour. I kind of use these things as a grouping over and over and over again. Uh, a brain tool is simply, and this isn't necessarily a tool that I have on my phone, but just something that I'm trying to continue to cultivate better, is to observe all the layers of the land. So I am looking at the tree line. I am looking at what the shrub level, what's going on. And I guess I should say this is especially if I'm in a forested area. So I'm looking at the canopy. I'm looking at 10, 15 feet off the ground. I'm looking at the kind of trees. I am looking at the structure of any brush, any uh, some people call it, if it's brambles, if it's whatever there is at waist height. And then I'm looking at the soil structure. I'm looking at the decay. Are there, is this an area that's maybe more given to mushroom cultivation? Is it mossy? Uh, is it an area that's opening up and is transitioning from one type of forest to the next? I wind up on a lot of land that has been logged. I was in a place recently that had been logged for paper production many, many, many times over, and then has been abandoned for about 20 years and kind of left to regrow whatever comes up. And anytime you have that level of soil disturbance, you're going to have a very kind of specific there's kind of like almost a protocol that nature follows, and it fills in with the things that are most hardy, that are most tolerant of soils that have been washed out and disturbed. And you often, you'll find native things, but this is usually one of those things where invasive species, so-called invasive species, seem to take hold, or really, really hardy stuff like brambles and sumac. And so I look at what's there. I literally look at what is growing, and that can tell me a lot about the land and what needs to be done in order to achieve whatever the goal may be. Sometimes it's leaving it alone, and that's totally fine. We don't have to mess with everything. Um, and just in general, I will use a ton of photography. My phone is mostly pictures of the outside and cats. So I will take all those photos, just kind of like a photo dump on Instagram. I'll take all those photos, I upload them to Google Drive. If it continues to behave itself, I may switch to Dropbox or something, because sometimes Google Drive drives me up the wall. But I will upload to Google Drive or some other cloud-based service, and um, have those just ready for me to access whatever device I'm on, so I can kind of plug them into the document that I build for my customer when we, kind of take it to the next stage of the design process. And I also use quite a bit a plant ID app, and there's a bunch of them out there. Picture This is really popular. I use one called, I think it's just called Plant ID. It's kind of generic, but I found it to be really reliable in this area, and that's mostly, within East Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, and kind of, an hour or two bordering us, as has worked really, really well, because I can remember a lot, but I can't remember everything, and I have to kind of interact with a species several times over for me to really cement it in my brain. I can look at something and be like, I know what that is, but I cannot get the name to come to me. So the plant ID apps are super handy, and again, I can kind of stack the functions. I can take a picture of that plant with the ID app, identify it, use the write on option, like on your little photo edit. I will write on that just a real quick, like plantain, for instance. And then I will take that same picture and take it with the GPS mapping function. And then I can also just screenshot that. And having a brain thought. Okay, I will capture that, and I will then I will know I located this species at this location. And I've actually taken some jobs that were basically just property walks, where I went around the land, photographs. It's like tree identification, maybe edibles, medicinals, different plants of various uses, and then uploaded all those photos into a document so you could find them on the GPS with a short description, and then sent that off to the landowner or whoever was interested in it. Um, Guys, that right there could be a viable business in and of its own. And it may be something I end up pursuing further because it's a lot of fun. There is a considerable amount of desk work after the fact, but I mean, what a cool thing to offer people is, here's what you've got, here's where it is. And especially if you did this maybe even like 4 times a year, so you're finding what's coming up in early spring. You're finding what it, how it blooms, how it sets seed, what it looks like when it's dormant, or if it disappears entirely. But in that area, this thing should have maybe seeded more of this thing, or then I know. If I dig here, maybe I don't see the tops of dandelions, but I know I can find the roots of the dandelions here in the winter, when that's usually when you want to dig for roots, for instance. So uh, the ability to kind of stack all those things together is super handy. And then I have a ton of reference materials, book wise. I could probably do a separate video. I'm sure I could do a separate video just on the books. But the ones I do tend to grab the most are the Native Plants of Tennessee book, my Audubon Society field guides, and I have one for everything. I have them for mushrooms, for plants, for trees, for birds, for insects. I mean, it's because everything, it's all tied together, guys. It all is giving you a picture of what's going on with your land, and literally you could spend a lifetime learning it all. So just plenty of books. Like I said, I'll do a separate video sometime on my favorite books and what kind of tends to stay out on my desk that I'm flipping through when I'm doing these designs. So that's the big stuff. There's always a chance I'm going to add more. I don't think I will drop any of that unless maybe I find an app that combines all these things. Man, that'd be great. Um, and probably, especially with Google Earth, I know there's tools on it that I haven't even figured out how to use yet. I could probably dedicate a day just to watching YouTube videos of people describing all of the tools that Google Earth has within it. So um, that's what I got for you today. I'm going to get back to work. Holler at me if I can help you with any design work. Strongrootsresources.com, strongrootsresources at gmail.com, and y'all take it easy.